All right. Well, welcome everybody to our tech talk. I know it's a little delayed, trying to track down a real world application of AR in libraries. Took a little bit of time, and then I scheduled it, but it was on Cesar Chavez Day, so we rescheduled that to make sure everybody would have an opportunity to join live if they were interested. So I'm Jesse Sims, and I'm the Assistant Library Director with Mesa Public Library. I just started in this role in January, so I'm really excited to be here. And when we polled this group over the summer for what topics you were interested in, AR was definitely much higher on the list than some of the other topics. So I was really excited to find this application. I think in doing the research, I found this application and one other application that Toronto Public Library was doing. And that was it that I found anyway in public libraries from searching the internet. So I'm really excited to see this presentation today. So we have Dream Syndicate with us, and I discovered them because they did a project with, I believe it's Harris County Public Library. It's the Houston area. And they did part of a mural with the AR enhancement to it. That's how I kind of discovered the company. So I reached out to them and asked if they would present on that project, as well as the future of AR and some other applications potential for libraries. So I'll do a quick introduction for them, and then I'll let them take the floor. So Dream Syndicate is born from over a decade of experience developing augmented reality, virtual reality, web-based and app experiences. They were an early adopter of this technology, and Dream Syndicate's creative director, Howard McCabe, who's with us today, developed an augmented reality experience for the National Guard in 2010, which was way early years for augmented reality. And this was long before people knew, what AR was or what its potential was. And this project opened a doorway and sowed the seeds that would give rise to Dream Syndicate, which is an experiential agency that specializes in AR, VR, web and app strategy, design, and development. So over a decade, they've developed countless augmented reality, virtual reality, app and web experiences, and they create immersive, enriching, tech-driven experiences for all manner of clients, spanning across multiple industries in the US and abroad. So if you checked out their website, you've seen they've done some really cool work. So I'm excited to see their presentation today. So with that, I will hand it over to the Dream Syndicate crew.
Thank you for that introduction, Jesse. I really appreciate it. And thank you everyone for having us today. I'm Howard McCabe, and I'm joined today by a few people from our company, Dream Syndicate, Ben Carter, who's executive producer, Ray Carbolata, head of strategy, and Olivia McCabe, associate producer. I'm going to take over the screen and share our deck, and we'll tell you all about AR in general, and then the work that we've been doing in augmented reality. So stand by one sec. Jesse, are you able to grant screen sharing?
Yeah, it's, yes, sorry about that. Go ahead.
No, it's okay. Gotcha, great, thank you. There we go. Can you guys see that?
Yes.
Yep, fantastic. Yes. All right, so at Dream Syndicate, we, as Jesse pointed out in the opening statement, we develop augmented reality experiences, virtual reality experiences, a variety of apps and web technology, location technology, you name it when it comes to experiential, as well as interactive web development. We have a broad range of clients, from the National Guard to Oakley to Nike to the Aldine Library in North Houston. Pretty broad range, from agencies to direct to clients to sports to the arts to public experiences. It's pretty broad. A little bit about us before, and Ray, if you feel like jumping in, jump right in. But Dream Syndicate, we we're an agency. We work a lot in augmented and virtual reality strategy. So we help our clients define the need for AR or VR. And sometimes there isn't that need, and we'll be honest and let people know, because our number one goal is that whatever we create in these mediums, works really well and basically achieves the goal that the client's looking for. Also, just a brief description of what augmented reality is. I like to say it's computer vision, and it recognizes an object and then it reacts in some way. So we, if you want to augment something, we'll take what's going to be augmented. We'll figure out how to recognize it with a device. And then once it's recognized, we'll present whatever information we're deemed to present. But what makes AR different is we present it in the physical location of the trigger. So it's not just something that overlays on your device screen, but it's living within the 3D physical space that we live in. So we're augmenting reality. We're just not showing you content on your screen. And that's pretty much what makes AR so special, and has a huge wow factor, because suddenly you're looking through your device and there's something there in physical space that shouldn't be there. And it runs the gap. Sorry.
Yeah, this is right. One thing that I would add that I think is really important is with new web technology, cloud technology, networks that we're dealing with, is that augmented reality and even virtual reality now can actually really solve business problems. It can collect data, it can tie to databases. There's so many things that it can do, or communication problems. It's not just, hey, let's deliver some really cool content a certain way. It's actually really becoming more of a tool, that allows businesses to use this tool to solve issues that they've had in a way that's more is better for a lot of reasons. But augmented reality in the beginning was traditionally sort of a marketing and kind of content tool. It's really evolved into something a lot more than that, and it will continue.
That's a good point, and it will continue. And what's kind of exciting for me about AR is ultimately, glasses, like the glasses I'm wearing, will be augmented, and that's kind of like the holy grail in AR. And when we reach that point, I think augmented reality via glasses that you wear, which you can wear all the time, will be just like the iPhone. It'll be kind of a culturally transformative experience, because pretty much anything has the potential to be augmented. And you can kind of let your mind go wild as far as it's like literally products, signage, a roadway, a store aisle, you name it, can be augmented. So anyway, so that's kind of a general description of augmented reality. Right now, we don't have publicly available, super lightweight AR glasses, so we have to rely on our tablets or our handheld phones or smart devices. But they work really well also because we're used to taking photographs with our devices, so it's a completely intuitive way to experience augmented reality. So AR, as Ray had just pointed out, I believe, AR has become more robust and easier to implement. It's pretty much, it's at a point now where, pretty much anyone out there has the ability to experience augmented reality. And for the last 10 years, appless AR hasn't really been available to us at a level that was reliable until around 2 years ago. So from about 2 years ago on, you've been able to experience augmented reality without having to download an app. So that's a big change because there is a little bit of friction when it comes to having to download an app. Social AR like Instagram, Facebook, Snap, TikTok has really adopted augmented reality, and all those platforms have their own AR ability or AR built-in platform. So that also contributes to, mass adoption because the AR experience is happening within a social app. So it's, super easy to access and also easy to share your experience. QR codes, since the pandemic, everyone uses QR codes now. So they're a great way to connect with the audience and trigger your AR experience. And So it's something that people are looking for now. When they see a QR code, they tend to get curious, which is great. But with all that being said, augmented reality delivered via an app can be way more robust because you're downloading all of your data that's going to create the AR experience to your phone. So you're not relying on your cell service or local Wi-Fi. It's already kind of built into your phone. So besides being easier to access from that standpoint, it also allows more features in the AR experience, as well as having an app, which can just also expand the content or the information that you want to convey just within your phone via the app. This image here is from the Aldine Library in North Houston. The entrance to the library is just to the right of this mural. But they came to us because they had heard about a mural that we had created for Mural Arts of Philadelphia. And they came to us because they had this early idea about painting this mural, but then also making this mural move, making this mural magic. So we worked with them for a few months to basically develop out the content related to this mural, create a social media experience, because again, they wanted this to be accessible to as many people as possible and also instantly. So a social media app seemed the way to go. And you can actually test this right now by just scanning that QR code with your phone and looking at the mural on the screen.
Important to note that this, you have to have Facebook or Instagram installed on your phone to activate this because it's handled through Spark AR, which is Meta's AR platform that's distributed both to Instagram or Facebook.
This is like a weird like meta AR because it's like AR through my computer screen. It's really just had my mind blown right now a little bit. It's super cool.
Yeah, actually, you know what? There's we don't have in our deck these little files called quick look files, which also get triggered by a QR code. But it's like an instant way to view a product or an object in 3D space in front of your monitor. So if we had a quick look page up with a bunch of QR codes, it could be a car, a motorcycle, a medical device, a book. And all you do is scan that with your phone, and you'll be able to place that object like in front of you on your desk, on your floor, and walk around it, look at it from every angle, walk up close to it. It's a really great way to experience AR as well. All right.
Yeah, and you could imagine what that looks like in the parking lot too, when you're standing there, that everything's to scale. So those books and those birds and everything like that, you can walk around and get underneath them and do all that kind of stuff.
Right, and it's also spaced out in 3D space, in Z space, so it's off from the wall. So you could walk within it also and have those ribbons flying around you. So it's pretty cool. Ben, could you talk about the Pen and Slavery project?
Yeah, sure thing.
Quickly, I just wanted to let you know, I've dropped in a page to our website that has quick look files into the chat just now. So if you want to take a look at those throughout this talk, you're more than welcome to click on that.
Great, thanks.
Thanks, Livia.
Yeah, and they work with your cell phones too, by the way. They won't work with your web browser. You have to point your phone, use your phone to go to that link.
That's right. Yeah, so just to close the loop on that, quick look files are basically I think these are only the ones that are on our website are only supported on Apple devices at the moment. But it's a proprietary file format that essentially, your iPhone or Android devices can kind of use the camera and positioning data to kind of put these objects in your real world environment. It's pretty cool. We call them like AR light experiences because they can't do a lot of the bells and whistles, but it's still super cool and an easy way to get 3D AR objects to a viewer. So picking back up in our deck, we've got a few case studies of projects that we've developed over the years to walk through. before we get into sort of some future thinking ideas as they relate to libraries. So we pulled a couple examples of jobs that are sort of in the arts and humanities and kind of in that kind of more library adjacent sector. So the first of which is the Pen and Slavery AR app. So this was actually developed with the library at the University of Pennsylvania here in Philadelphia. Several years back, they did a deep dive into their archives and basically found that there was some troubling links to racism throughout the history of the foundation of the school. And they wanted to develop a platform to talk about that and kind of bring that into the open for students, alumni, really anybody. They were unable to get like an actual physical tour, kind of like greenlit by the university, but they were able to do this via AR. And so they kind of embarked on this effort to build these AR experiences and this AR app to tell this story and provide a sort of alternate campus tour with this focus in mind. They reached out to us initially as advisors to kind of help them with this student-led project. But after, I think about a year, maybe a little over a year, with student sort of changeover as people graduated and kind of went on to other things, this was not fully done yet. So they kind of brought us in to kind of finish it, push it over the goal line, so to speak. So just the big overview, through their research, they found some pretty compelling things. And so we worked with that student team to flesh out and bring to life these ideas in real world 3D like AR experiences. So the images you'll see here, one of these things was this big 3D geodesic dome that had all of these cool, historical like papers and like images and things that were unearthed in the Physicians College library. And on the right was a video study about a couple generations going through the University of Pennsylvania and just sort of kind of how racism sort of like impacted their family in like an unbroken line of history. Very interesting stories to tell. I think there were 6 total AR activations across the campus. And the app provided a really easy to follow kind of walking map of how to kind of get through the campus and see all of these things and activate them all. We used a combination of, world space tracking and marker-based tracking. So we were using like plaques on buildings to launch a few of these things. And others were sort of just, once you were in the right place, you would be able to kind of plop it down in the environment and experience it. This is a free cross-platform app. So you can, if you scan this QR code on this page, it'll take you to the App Store where you can download this. And the sort of like, open secret with this app is you don't actually have to be on campus to do it. You can kind of do it from anywhere. But because these stories do relate to the University of Pennsylvania campus, it's a better, fuller experience if you're able to do it on site. But if you're curious to do it, and from wherever you are in Arizona, you can download the app and still check out the experiences.
Right, and I'm sure you can tell, but still, I'm going to point it out. This right-hand frame with the tapestry, that tapestry is not there. That's a screen grab. The posts on the left and the right and the rope, supporting rope, that's all AR. So that's just an open space, but when you place it, that's what it looks like actually through your phone. And you can walk around that and see it from the other side. You can look at it from profile view. It's in 3D. But that's part of the beauty of augmented reality is this is anchored in that physical space.
Yeah, and that quilt was actually the family's quilt that the students did a photogrammetry scan of. So it is it's a virtual 3D like representation or recreation of this physical quilt that belonged to the family. It was pretty interesting.
Right, and then also the geodesic dome, you're meant to be inside of it. So the dome is all around you, so you're looking around and you see these images all mounted on the geodesic dome, but you're within the dome. And they're all hot spots. So if you could look at it, see an image, be interested in, polygenism, you tap on that, you learn about it. And pretty much all the images in there are activation points to learn more. So again, you're immersed in that environment and it's kind of locked around you. It's very cool. All right, next. Ben, could you talk through this one?
Absolutely, absolutely. So this is a cross-platform public app that we developed for Monument Lab. Monument Lab is a nonprofit that's based here in Philadelphia, but they've since gone global. They've got branches and groups operating across the world now. And what they do is really their focus is on monuments, really, and kind of like exploring the idea of what is a monument? Is it an actual physical thing, or is it just public art, or, and kind of what can it be? So they're a really fun group to work with. We've done a couple projects with them, although this is the biggest and latest one that we've done. So they came to us and they wanted to build an app with a set of really interactive, comprehensive experiences that focused on one place, and kind of really pushing out the idea of what a place means to a community, and over time, and also just sort of realistically, like, what does it mean from a bunch of different viewpoints. So it was pretty heady, and it was a lot of fun to kind of come up with these different experiences. But we landed on 5 unique experiences. We had a local poet, and I think she's billing herself as an artivist in this app, Ursula Rucker. She acted as our tour guide. So we shot her in our studio, and put her in AR as our sort of actual video tour guide. And so she would come onto screen, kind of magically build in place and introduce the user to the app and to the experiences, and then essentially let the user play with 3 main interactive experiences. These were the living timeline, which was a sequential and atemporal exploration of a timeline of key moments in history that happened in that actual place at the base of the Art Museum steps here in Philadelphia, as well as what we called city sightlines, which was a set of historic maps that were interactive. So as the user's looking over from the I don't know if you've been to Philadelphia, but the Art Museum is in this it's like right at the end of this parkway, and you have a great view of the city. And it's a really good place to kind of visualize how the city has changed over the years in context with these historical maps. And then we played up the Rocky statue, which is a pretty popular tourist destination that's located right in front of the Art Museum as well. But exploring, kind of what what led to the idea of Rocky, and kind of why Rocky became Philadelphia's folk hero, so to speak. He's a fictional character, obviously, but there's a lot of support in art history, kind of that build up to the genesis of that character and why Rocky resonates so well and is tied so closely to Philadelphia. So we used AR in order to bring all of this to life and create these like virtual galleries and interactive maps that you can kind of, you're looking through your phone and you're seeing Philadelphia as it exists today, but you're also seeing what it looked like in the 1700s and earlier. And with the timeline, you're able to physically walk around and like see all of these different events that were happening in that place across a vast expanse of time. So it was a perfect medium to really bring this project to life. And it certainly wouldn't have been possible, with traditional media, whether it's videos or actual physical stands, it would not nearly have been as successful as it was. So moving on, Mural Arts AR. This was a AR app that we developed with the Mural Arts organization in Philadelphia. This project is what brought the Aldine Library to us. They did some research and found this and thought it was really, really cool, and reached out to us with their own mural project. And I have to agree with them; it is super, super cool. So this was, I think, the first, at least to our knowledge, the first large scale, like mural city block sized scale AR experience that was ever made. We took over a gigantic mural. I mean, this is the side of an entire building on a block in Philadelphia. And through AR, we took over the whole thing. And what we did was we extruded elements from the mural design. We worked closely with the artist, Joshua Mays, who made this piece of art. And we built out all of these elements that were borrowed from the mural in 3D, and then embellished things where we could. Like, we took these floating globes and kind of inside of them built these little like diorama worlds, with like butterflies and like really cool little 3D kind of scenes. He's got several different sort of like statuesque figures in the mural that we completely modeled from scratch in 3D to look like it, that we sort of kind of brought out from the walls and we're sitting in the grass garden in front of it. So it became this like really explorable, fully immersive 3D scene that kind of augmented, to use the word, augmented the flat traditional 2D mural. And one really, really interesting feature of this experience was every single element was tied to an audio element. So a local producer and DJ named King Britt was a close collaborator on this project, and he developed a soundscape, an interactive soundscape that we built into the experience. So as the user walks through from one side to the other, the audio changes and like it kind of progresses through this soundscape. But each individual element, as you get physically closer to it, you start to hear an audio piece of the score that's closely linked to that element kind of like come up in volume. And so like it's dimensional in its audio as well. So as you're kind of like going around and interacting with things, the audio is changing constantly. So it gives you this like really super immersive experience, which was a lot of fun.
Yeah, it's a really good point, which I didn't bring up earlier about the technology. And that's, we can place 3D images and 2D images in physical space, but we could also place sounds in physical space that you can walk into and walk out of. But within physical 3-dimensional space, we can put sounds in different areas, which is what happened in this project.
Yep. And this app is still live, to the best of my knowledge. It's still live. It is unfortunately only for Apple, for iOS devices. At the time that we built this, we were really pushing the limits on the technology and what the phone could handle. And at the time, Android just was not able to support it. So it's on our plan to go back and make an Android version now that the Android devices have caught up and are capable of doing this. But we've been pretty busy lately. So, and the last thing to mention about this project was it was so interesting that we actually turned it into a VR experience that we brought to the Barnes Foundation, which is a museum here in Philadelphia, not far from the Art Museum now. It was relocated a few years back. But we brought a couple VR stations to the Barnes for an event and let people explore it in VR as well, because we weren't able to bring the actual physical mural into the museum. However, if you do download the app, you'll see you don't have to be at the mural to activate it. We let you do it from any space that you're in. I just recommend you do it in a big space. It works really well if you can find a really large sort of like enclosed space, like a mall or a museum. or just, you know, I would recommend an overcast day, because sometimes direct sunlight, it's hard to see your screen, you know, when it's super sunny. And I imagine in Arizona, it's pretty sunny all the time. Sweet Chariot. So this was the first AR app that we developed with the Mural Arts organization. This was a Mural Arts funded grant project with an artist, a local artist named Marisa Williamson. And she had this idea to make a augmented reality treasure hunt that kind of snaked its way through historic neighborhoods here in Philadelphia. She came to us because she needed help basically executing it. You know, but she was super interested and involved in AR in the arts capacity. And in collaboration with us, you know, she got to push it further than she ever expected to be able to, which was a lot of fun. So we worked with her to develop the app, which was sort of the key to unlocking all the AR experiences. And what we did was we went on a walking tour of Philadelphia and identified the areas that she was producing content for, what we could use as markers and triggers, and how we could kind of tie it all together. So she produced videos that were a combination of, you know, historical sort of recounts of major events, as well as artistic, interpretive, and performances. You know, and in one case, it was also an augmented mural. So one of the experiences in this app was an actual mural that was augmented, which may have been one of the earliest augmented murals ever made. She also, in tandem, developed a scratch-off treasure map that paired with this. It was a physical piece of paper with like scratch-off circles that the user would kind of use to get hints to find the next AR experience. And ultimately, at the end, it sort of wove this narrative together, and the final conclusion brought you to what is now a playground, but was a mass burial site, you know, in the past. And it's the ultimate resting place of the main character of the story, which was Amelia Brown. So it was really interactive and fun, and it's, you know, a walking tour of one of the most beautiful neighborhoods here in Philadelphia. So it was a pretty big success, and it after its debut, which was during a what was that called? It was a couple month run where they had a bunch of pop-up murals. This was one of them, one of the projects. But it got then moved to a more permanent home in the African American History Museum here in Philadelphia. I'm blanking on the name of the event. So that was AR. Howard, do you want to go over virtual technology, or do you want me to speak to this?
So I'll talk a little bit about VR. So the difference between augmented reality and virtual reality, which some of you may know, some may not, is augmented reality, you're in your real space and you're augmenting it. So first of all, pretty much everybody has a device that allows them to experience augmented reality. It is what it is. It's super easy to access. And again, we're augmenting what you see around you. With virtual reality, you're creating an entirely new reality. You have to wear a headset that completely isolates you from everything around you. And now you're in this new world, this virtual world. You know, virtual reality has been worked on for 30 years now, but it really didn't come into like serious consumer play until Oculus kind of came into existence. There's not just the Oculus at this point. There are some competitors. There's other headsets you could get. Sony has a VR headset, Sony PlayStation. But the Oculus basically allowed just a consumer level access to virtual reality, to really high quality virtual reality. So in VR, you know, you can have games in VR, you can have history lessons in VR, you can have group chats and concerts in VR now. Virtual reality is really kind of expanding, you know, capabilities of VR are expanding quickly. leading us to the talk of the metaverse, which everybody or a lot of people have probably heard about. And we won't go into a metaverse conversation right now because that'll take the rest of the day. But VR is just a great way, again, for gaming, to tell stories, to teach, to do role playing. I mean, you name it. It's a pretty fascinating technology. This project here that we see on the screen, which I'll play real quickly, is a project that we created for Penn Medicine. Penn Medicine hired us to create a virtual reality experience for patients at their oncology department. That's a high stress situation that you're in. It's high stress for your caregivers. It's high stress for the doctors who are dealing with helping people with cancer. So Penn Medicine wanted to set up these stations in the waiting rooms where people could sit down, put on a headset, take 15 minutes and just kind of just disappear for a while. So we created this guided meditation experience, which you see images from here, which just helped people relax for a little bit to hopefully forget about their problems and step into a different world and calm their minds. And it was really successful. It was so successful that shortly after we installed this in their waiting room, that Penn Medicine asked us to put additional systems behind the scenes for the doctors and the nurses so that they could kind of separate, just escape for 15 minutes as well and relax. So that is a pretty interesting project. And here's some more about it. There were some challenges, and one was, they didn't want to have a keyboard, they didn't want to have a mouse, they wanted it to be a standalone kind of self-starting and self-ending experience. So we had to figure out how to make this kind of, totally foolproof and make it super easy for anybody with no experience in virtual reality, make it easy for them to be able to just, see that over in the corner of the waiting room, go sit down, hit one button and then put on the headset and then it starts. And that's what we created. And then also Penn Medicine wanted to collect a little bit of data just to see what people thought about the whole experience. So at the end of the experience, we had a little questionnaire, and to answer the questions, all you had to do was move your head left or right, up or down to put that little red dot over your answer, yes, no, or no change, or whatever else, whatever other questions there were. So we were able to also just get a little bit of feedback as to whether or not people enjoyed it, if they sat through the whole experience, and a series of maybe 5 or 6 other questions. One other thing we did for this was we also created the signage that would invite people to this VR experience. And we also kind of curated the seat and the monitor and just the whole little area at the hospital where people were experiencing this. Let's see, anything else to add to that, Ben?
Yeah, I think just saying, VR is really a really great technology when you have a captive audience. By and large, most of our VR requests come from either trade shows or sort of, the edutainment sort of industry of wanting to kind of give somebody an immersive but interesting kind of learning, whether it's medical or, something else. So we've done sales reps, VR experiences where you kind of role playing, that kind of stuff. It's an easy way to transport somebody into a whole new environment. But you do just have that sort of technology barrier where you need to get a headset on a person versus AR, which is a lot easier because everybody has a smartphone now. So it's so ubiquitous.
Right. And some people might think, well, only a certain demographic is going to use a headset. But after we created this, we met with some groups from patients from their oncology department that were mainly elderly, up to about 85 years old, who sat down, put on the headset and sat through the experience. And pretty much everyone loved it. No one had any physical problems from it. and you know, they all definitely would have done it again. So
Yeah,
as
that's a
long
good
as you make it easy for them to understand how to use it, I think it crosses all demographics.
and that's a really good point. You know, we hear a lot from people hesitancy, like, oh, VR makes me sick, it makes me nauseous, and this, that, and the other thing. And you know, the truth behind that is, for some people, sure, it's not a great fit, but really, the experience most people have with kind of feeling nauseous or getting sick is just really poorly done VR. You know, not paying attention to frame rates, not paying attention to motion. So when when you take all of that into account and build your world, you know, in a way, and make sure that it's performant for the device that you're launching it on, you know, that essentially overcomes any of those concerns and creates a really smooth end experience for the user.
Yeah.
So it's really just, you need to know the technology that you're working with, you know, the ins and outs of it all, just to make sure you're not going to be kind of sabotaging your own work, so to speak.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah. So we you know, we thought about, you know, when we were invited to speak to this group, you know, we thought about what benefits, or how can a library benefit from AR technology or VR technology. And you know, we put some information together on our thoughts. But then also, it's funny, and we'll get to this, but probably 2 years ago, we met with a group who wanted to get funding to do a library project in augmented reality. And we'll get to that in a minute. But you know, goals, what we see as some goals would be of utilizing AR would be, you know, digital literacy, because augmented reality can help with that. Make stories more fun, because it takes the words off the page and can add visuals to those. Accessibility, you know, there's a lot, as I said, it's computer vision. So if in an AR project or AR program, you know, the AR can help you understand what you're seeing. And then it can bring awareness to other library offerings, like instrument checkout. So Ben, you want to talk through this?
Sure. Yeah. So, I mean, you know, in coming up with ideas, we love sitting around coming up with ideas. It's like, you know, I think our favorite part of this job. You know, I think we were looking at this in a lot of different ways, but I think at the core of it, there's a couple different sort of tactics with AR as it would apply to a library, right? There's utility. So wayfinding, recommendations, you know, basically helping people connect to books, or kind of figure out what kind of genres they want to go to. And then there's entertainment. Obviously, you know, there's ways to sort of utilize books, make scenes jump off the page, you know, kind of fill it in. And then there's accessibility, like, you know, so just helping people kind of read that might have trouble otherwise, using the technology in a way to kind of open up reading to and exploring books to audiences, you know, that maybe can serve better, you know, with this technology. So what Howard mentioned, you know, we had a couple ideation sessions with the artist Marisa Williamson, who we did the Sweet Chariot app with. She had the idea for what we were calling the Philadelphia Weekly Reader. And she was trying to kind of infuse some AR into local branch libraries here in Philadelphia. And, you know, one of the best ideas that came out of those sessions was this sort of monthly kind of pamphlet or zine, if you will. You know, we were thinking it as more of like a zine, you know, like a stripped down kind of magazine, but aimed towards kids, you know, of sort of early reading age, in a way to sort of to get them more excited about reading and aid in literacy in that sort of target group. With the idea being that these would be sort of physical zines that would have things to read and to do, you know, maybe it's like a coloring exercise or, you know, whatever. But then they would also come to life in AR, and we could tell this story and build this story in a whole new way through AR. So we were talking about, you know, characters that would kind of narrate this thread between different stories and kind of set up these scavenger hunts that kids would have to go find specific books and kind of make it this reading assignment, where you'd sort of read a couple different books to kind of fill in this other picture and kind of tying it all together in this really fun, interactive way. And then also tying in sort of metrics around that. So by doing this all in AR, we're able to sort of track usage and adoption rate and kind of see how successful is this, how many kids are starting it and not finishing it versus actually going through all the steps, which would give us some real life feedback on kind of like ways to adapt it if we needed to, and kind of ways to tailor this to make it more successful ultimately.
Right. The idea was to gamify the library experience, and in the process of gamifying it, tie that into books. So that part of the gamification with your device of being at the library is leading you to books where then you're learning about stories that maybe you didn't know about, but hopefully compelling the kids or anyone to actually take that book out and read it. So it's using digital technology to introduce books to people in a fun way.
Yep, totally. And we like to kind of talk to clients about a spectrum of AR, as it might apply to them. Like the Aldine Library is a perfect example of that. She saw this super huge interactive, spatial augmented mural that we did in Philadelphia with Mural Arts, but she had a much smaller budget and a much tighter turnaround time. And so in talking with her, we realized her idea would be totally accomplishable with a social AR filter, using Facebook or Instagram. We didn't have to go through the process of building out this big, huge, grandiose app. We could do what she needed to do and accomplish it in a lighter way. So, AR can get as complex and as involved as you want, or it can be as simple as, a point of purchase display. Like maybe there's just a QR code at the checkout counter, and you scan it with your phone and it takes you to a really fun, simple little AR experience that just is talking about, the featured book of the month or, whatever.
Right. Or this week's events,
Right.
So you might have guest speakers throughout the week or throughout the month, and you have a point of purchase display that just says, events with the QR code. So you don't have to print that out every month. You just have that. And all you're doing is updating, your digital event list. And people point their phone, they find out who's coming to speak next week, or if there's a children's reading session,
Right,
or whatever.
It could be, selfie filters. So like everybody knows about the like Snapchat bunny ears, dog nose, that kind of thing. But those are actually really robust. You can do a lot with those, and it's a lot of fun. People love it. They like taking pictures and seeing themselves on their screen. So, we work with clients all the time on filters and kind of how to sort of make a fun, engaging kind of brand engagement activation. It could be, I don't know. I'm struggling for us. Maybe it's Mark Twain week, and you want to give people an old timey hat and kind of make it sepia tone and make them feel like they're in that period of story, just to spitball ideas here. But
I think now's a good time to open it up to questions, because there could be other ideas out in the group here, and questions about anything we've just talked about.
Yeah, we can go down a rabbit hole and just start thinking of ideas all day long. But
right.
I'd love to hear from you guys too.
Yeah, I think Brandon, did you have a question about changing the text on the fly?
Yeah, this is Brandon over here in Mesa. That last app you showed last slide, where you had it kind of on a shelving display. I'm sure that shelving display, if you hit it, somehow it recognizes what type of display that is and then how it'll light it up. I would think that I would hope that we could change the text. So as the displays change or whatever, we could change them in the app ourselves, or will we have to get back with you to change the app?
Yeah, again, depending, obviously complexity is a huge variable, but, we build apps all the time that have a sort of back-end CMS so that content can be updated on the fly. It doesn't have to be hard coded or anything like that. So something like this, I mean, what you're seeing is kind of a mock-up that we put together. But this would be easily accomplishable with like a web-based CMS where you could change content and updates regularly.
Yeah, I was always thinking that going to the shelves, if you had some type of any kind of stickers or anything that would be recognizable as you're walking down the shelves of the whole library, let's say, if they were numbered and the backend CSS had those numbers, you could kind of change them as the books kind of slid on the shelves, because of course we do not have the books always in the exact same spots. But yeah, that'd be kind of cool.
Yeah,
Totally. And, you know, depending on kind of how a particular library's infrastructure is built, there might be possibilities of kind of tapping into, you know, your database and your sort of catalog and trying, you know, basically sort of taking that data and working with it in a way that it's responsive. So however you're managing your collections, it can kind of respond to that in some way. Of course, you know, that all depends on if the technologies are compatible or can be made compatible. But in most cases these days, pretty much everything can be sort of linked up with everything else.
Well, when you mentioned this too, you mentioned a couple different timelines. Of course, a lot of it was art and music and all that too, but how long does a project take to kind of go from start to finish?
Again, that's a huge variable. I mean, you know, we're working on a project right now that I think was start to finish a 2.5 week turnaround timeline, you know, which is pretty quick. We do get our fair share of those. Versus the Mural Arts app, I think we were working on that for 6 months, you know.
Okay.
So, and we've had jobs that have gone longer than that. But most of our jobs are kind of in the like 6 to 8 week window,
Right.
plus or minus. But again, it all depends on the scope and the scale.
Right.
And the other thing I think is interesting to think about is obviously we're talking about, you know, wayfinding and finding books and stuff like that. But Ben mentioned Mark Twain. You know, a lot of that, some of that stuff can be evergreen kind of thing. So that if you had some event or something that happens every year, if you created an app around it, or an experience around it, it's something that you can use to have schools come to visit during that time so that they can experience that or whatever. It's a way to sort of get people to come to the library. And that's something that, you know, you can use, you know, for, and it's history. So you can use it, you know, for how many years you want to use it, and sort of build your library of these experiences, which are a way to not only, you know, talk about authors or talk about literacy or talk about books, famous books, things like that, but also think about it as a tool to get you know, students to come to the library or people to come to the library and visit the library for that experience that's sort of expands your reach to get people interested in coming to the library.
Exactly.
so that makes me think, like just using this page as an example, and I'm talking to a bunch of library people right now. Would an app, well, I'll just call it the Book of the Month app, that has a CMS backend where you can, you know, scan 20 book covers and then add whatever copy you want related to that book cover, and then, you know, push that app live, you know, and do that every month. So, you know, you populate this shelf every month with your books, and then you've also populated your app, and then people can just point their phone at it, and they, you know, library regulars know they can just point their phone with their Book of the Month app at that shelf. Is that something, do you think, that libraries would use?
I would say that one challenge with that is that if the books all get checked out, then your app is sort of useless until something
Right.
comes back. So in the chat, we were talking about, you know, using Goodreads. Ben mentioned using the Goodreads book cover recognizing feature, and then you could use like an ISBN and then go pull information from your Polaris database. So that way it wouldn't matter what book was on there.
Right.
You could automatically be pulling stuff from your database and surfacing information. And then maybe like there would be like an overarching, you know, monthly thing that you would change out in a CMS in the back end. I just think it'd be very challenging to consistently change out for individual titles, because again, it checks out and there's your 5 minutes of work or whatever you spent putting it in the back end.
Right. Okay.
So Jesse's thinking about that a little bit. Let's just sort of think about where you know, people sort of rank things. I mean, a good example would be, You know, if you go into a wine store, sometimes there's the 20 wines that the staff has picked or whatever. So your staff picks the 20 books that they like for this month. But you could tie that to your system so that if that book is available, that person could say, hey, I want to pick it up and I want to check it out. I want to hold it at this time. You could have that be part of it. Or it could say, hey, this book is checked out, but it's available next week, Tuesday. Do you want to pick it up then? Would you like to hold it? You could do that then. So you can work around the, hey, it's not available by just sort of building that. But thinking about the sort of the front end of that is like, you know, that list of books is trying to expose people to books that they would never really think about or consider, you know, and getting your staff to do it or other people to do it, I think is an interesting way to sort of get everybody engaged and have things that are fun and things like that. And it also could be something where people don't necessarily have to come to the library to do that. If you have an app, or if you send them a flyer, or they go to your website and scan a QR code, they could see the list right there. You know, so it's a very interesting idea that you're talking about.
I like that idea. I feel like at Chandler, we create these staff bookshelves every month. Or like one of our staff members is featured. They choose like 40 books, and it's books they typically read or would recommend. And they could, like, a lot of people will come up and be like, hey, I really liked this person's book recommendations. Do you have any similar? So we could use an app where it's like, hey, yeah, just scan their QR code. You can see some of the other ones that aren't on their shelf right now that they would recommend that you can place on hold, or that would be really interesting, actually.
Yeah, you don't even need an app for that, frankly. You know, that could be just done through your website pretty easily. QR codes are just such an easy way to get, you know, web content to people on mobile devices.
And it's funny, when we were talking about this last week, one of our team mentioned like staff favorites at Blockbuster Video.
Yeah.
So Stacy, that's like, we were thinking of that. We think that's a really great idea.
Yeah, I'm seeing some comments in the chat about VR specifically and how it could be. We do have another slide about it that I don't think we had gotten to yet. But yeah, I think, you know, pushing the library, like the concept of the library, into the metaverse, which is also a concept, is definitely something we're talking about. You know, I think VR, it looks like Ben had mentioned the idea of sort of transporting people to far-flung locations. And, you know, that was definitely came up in our ideation as well, like recreating, you know, the library in Alexandria or something, you know, something crazy that most people would never be able to do or get to, or even, you know, something from the past that maybe doesn't exist anymore. You know, if we have a good idea of kind of record of what was there, we can make it in VR and kind of let people explore. So, you know, I think VR could be great. And you know, in the good thing about a library is you do have somewhat of a captive audience. So it'd be easy to set up VR stations that people can use, you know, and I think especially for learning, VR offers a lot, especially nowadays with, you know, exploring kind of things and like putting people into these scenarios that they would only be reading about otherwise. So, you know, there's certainly a lot of potential there.
Yeah, I mean, just the VR headset. I mean, libraries have computer stations set up. You know, computers aren't cheap. VR headsets are much cheaper, and you can access browsers in a VR headset. You can access VR content, but you can also, you know, access Netflix and movie channels and like so much within that just small compact headset. That, you know, there might be uses where people could see, you know, a movie list and sit someplace and watch a film within the confines of the library, you know, or just use it to search for a book. There's a lot of, you know, a lot of capabilities within a VR headset.
And
I'm sorry, this is Brandon from Mesa again. I have a question for the group here about Oculus and being tied to Facebook, like I put in chat here. I actually spoke to a Facebook Oculus represent person that actually dealt with the whole product, and I was looking at business VR. I was looking at anything we could do where without having to tie Oculus to a Facebook account to download and then purchase apps and all that. They specifically told me that if I said I had an environment of 10, 20 type of devices, am I to create 20 generic accounts, or can I have it like an Apple configurator type of thing where I can push it all like I would want in an environment? And they said licensing for Oculus right now is one user, one person. And they said if I used it in our environment like we do here in our ThinkSpot makerspace, that technically people should be logging into our device with their accounts, and we should not generically provide them an account. I'm just curious if anybody else has seen that, because I was like, well, that's a big problem. And I got on the list of their whatever development that they are pushing later in the year, I guess, some different type of business software to do that exact thing. But I'm just curious what people think.
Right. I was going to ask Brandon when you had that conversation, because I know they are changing those rules.
They are. Yeah. They said that they're doing a new business environment where, again, I think they're going to let you push the software to everything. Because I said I have to create generic accounts, and then I didn't want to put a credit card account on my account because it was a public device. So I used another one and I gifted it over to the other. It was just a mess. So I don't know if that's what other people are seeing or not.
Yeah, I think it's important to sort of separate the hardware from the concept of the metaverse. Obviously, Facebook changed its name to Meta, so they're trying to really be like, when you think metaverse, you think of Facebook or Meta. But really, you know, Facebook owns the hardware, right? They're the ones who develop and sell the headsets. VR, like the things that you do in VR, is much more wide open. It's much more like, you know, the internet. You know, you've got lots and lots of different organizations kind of with their own sort of real estate stakes in the metaverse that are not linked with Facebook in any way, shape, or form. And, you know, as Howard mentioned, there are other headsets out there. Of course, the Oculus Quest is by far and away the largest market share of VR headsets. I mean, by a major magnitude. But that will change. I mean, and over time, you know, as things progress and as the metaverse becomes more actually important to our day-to-day, you know, that will become decoupled, I think, from Facebook, and it'll become a lot more open.
And Brandon, the thing that you saw that we did with Penn had an issue with Facebook's headset. So I can't remember what it is, but we used a third-party headset on that because data is an issue. Obviously, HIPAA laws is an issue, so they couldn't really use the Facebook stuff. But if you think about it too, you know, especially when you get into VR is sort of its content. It's sort of like a book itself. I mean, there's so many experiences. The question is, if you had, you know, a bunch of VR computers with a bunch of VR content on it, would people come in to your library to sort of check them out and experience that stuff there? Like they would watch, I mean, you guys obviously have some libraries have movies and other things like that. Well, this would be sort of like that, except you'd have a station that somebody would come in and sign up for, and because I want to see the, you know, the dinosaur experience that is on there or something like that, you know. So there's definitely some opportunities there to you know, deliver, you know, other content to your audience or your customers, you know, via VR in the library.
Oh, I love that idea. I think just the Oculus too is just so wireless, hands-free, easy to use and all that it was cheap and we got them. But I know, like Ben mentioned Steam VR. My son has that. Great. I love it. It's like expensive and nice, but it's wired and it needs sensors around the room and all that. So there is definitely good for whatever we're going to use. It's just the ease of use of having the Oculus just coming up real easy.
If I could interrupt you really quick. Hi, this is Ben. So Steam VR is not limited to a single headset. What's nice about Steam VR is you can use any headset that you can connect to a PC with it. You can even use your Oculus Quest headsets with a couple different types of software already. The problem is you do need a pretty beefy PC
computer. Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Which, you know, that's getting cheaper, especially if you're doing older stuff. You can get away with a lot less intense hardware, but yeah, I mean, you can use any headset with it. You can develop for it yourself pretty easily with free software like Unity has free plugins for Steam VR and stuff like that. So just if you're worried about cost with Steam VR, I don't think that's really the main concern.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, you know, lots to talk about, lots of cool things with this technology. You know, it's funny you mentioned the idea of like an enterprise VR kind of setup where you have multiple units. We've actually done that with the Oculus Quest 2s for like trade shows and for sort of meeting, like larger meeting pitches. And we just set up like Dream Syndicate 01, Dream Syndicate 02, 03, 04, 05, like accounts just to kind of preload what we wanted on them and just like let them be at that. And, you know, we never got any sort of cease and desist letters from Facebook or something like that.
Yeah, because, you know, the most headsets we dealt with were maybe up to 10 headsets, and it's easy enough just to set up, you know, company accounts for that kind of number.
We've done that, of course, with all of our devices here with either, and if it requires different Gmail accounts, we've done that too. But when you think about doing 10, 20, whatever devices, and then you're purchasing the software on those devices,
right?
That's the key though, when they do get disabled, when everybody says that, you know, don't create generic Facebooks, you're going to get banned on those accounts, whatever. I agree. I don't think I've seen that either, but it's just, that's when you think about licensing and what they're talking about, I think we're just trying to be a little more towards this is what we shouldn't be doing. Of course, I know we're not supposed to do it, but you know, you got to make it work. And I'm sure anybody here that's tried to set up a couple of them, you're not going to use everybody else's personal email addresses or Facebook. So
yeah, that's not a solution. And what we do is much more closed and much more controllable than having it accessible to the public in a library. So I'm not advocating you do what we do.
I know. No, that's fine. And we've had to do that anyways. Everybody probably here has had to do that and fake all their Google accounts and all that too. But it's just what you have to do sometimes in the public environment. And again, licensing, when you buy one unit, it shouldn't be shared between a bunch of people, just like our Apple licenses for some of our Adobe software or something. It's like, there's just so many. School and library may have a better way of doing it if you have a different license, but just off the shelf Oculus, it was a pain. And I think Stacy mentioned that over at Chandler too, that they didn't do that either, because it is a pain, but we'll see what happens in the future. I agree. I like the tech and it's going to be cool.
Yep.
Yeah, for us, we couldn't do this because of Facebook and the city. I mean, I don't even have access to like our library Facebook like at all. So the city was very specific about not being able to create like different accounts on Facebook based on for a city government entity. But we have the PlayStation VRs here. And all 4 of our libraries have a PS4 with the VRs, and we've done some programs with them. We haven't done a ton of programs, but we'll download VR games quite often. We have even had staff do that the don't stop talking one, where you have to like keep talking or a bomb goes off type thing. You have to defuse it. That was really fun to throw our staff into that. We actually did some of that during our staff trainings just for team bonding. But yeah, we haven't used it so much for the public. We've done like Beat Sabers, things like that for our team programs, and some of our large events we'll take out the VRs. They are still wired, but it's been easy to use since we each have our own library, like PlayStation lockdown type thing. We have 4 of them, so if we bring them all together for a large event, it's nice because we can have them all together. So I'd be interested in figuring out if those can hook up to Steam VR though, because that would be a really interesting turning point for us, I feel.
As I've looked into that before, you can with at least the older ones. There's a new one coming out. I don't know what it is, but it's a total pain in the butt and it's probably not worth it.
Good to know.
Yeah.
Any other questions, ideas?
I have a few AR questions, and if anybody has questions, they can also feel free to hop in or drop it in the chat. So one question was if with any of these projects, because we're public libraries, of course, we're thinking about access for everybody. If there is like devices that you've had on site for people to use if they don't have a smartphone. Most people do. Some people don't have, you know, the iPhone if it's iPhone exclusive or whatnot. Has that been something that's been used in any of the projects you've worked on?
We do lots, you know, and historically we've done tons and tons of AR apps that were delivered specifically for use on like lockdown iPads. For, you know, either sort of team events or trade shows or, you know, activations where they didn't want the overhead of a public facing app that users would download themselves, and instead the simplicity route of like, here's an iPad, go play, you know, kind of thing. So that's super, you know, that's super easy. And a lot of times there are ways to kind of get around the requirements for a public facing app, which often kind of skew budgets a little higher, because in order to put something live on an app store, it has to be robust enough to sort of make the grade to get approved as a public app. Whereas you can kind of circumvent a lot of that with just kind of building something specifically for like a B2B distribution.
Also, you can put the tablets or devices into kiosk mode. So all they could do is what you've programmed it for them to do. They can't just also use it to send email or browse the internet or take photographs. You know, it only can be used for the program that we've designated it to use.
Yep. You'd lock it out so the users can't do anything but what you want them to do. And we find like iPad, like the latest gen iPad Pros are like the ideal device for AR. Like there's so many features that you can take advantage of now, especially with the LiDAR camera. You know, you can do an insane amount of stuff. We could literally map the entire library branch and like make an AR experience that responds to the physical environment because of the LiDAR camera. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's really cool. What's been kind of like the average length of the kind of AR and VR experiences? Obviously you could stay in them as long as you want, but like what's the amount of I guess content that can, you know, you can get through? What kind of time frame would that be?
Oh, that depends. That really depends on kind of what you're trying to do. So the Pen VR experience that we showed, that was, I think, 8 minutes, I think, was the total runtime of that, all said and done. Which we needed. And we needed all 8 of those minutes because it was the idea, the concept was a relaxation, like a VR meditation. And so if it was any shorter than that, it wouldn't have been as successful because it wouldn't have given the user enough time to sort of like really sort of shed off, you know, what they're trying to relax through.
Yeah, and we wanted it to be longer, but the hospital wanted us to keep it down as far as the time frame. Yeah.
Right. But AR experiences, you know, depending on what it is, we typically say keep them short and sweet, you know, for things that are sort of promotion or more entertainment based. You want to keep them short and sweet. You want to like hit the viewer with something really spectacular and like wow moment. And then sort of, you know, get to your message and get them out.
Well, unless you break it up into pieces, like the Pen and Slavery, you know, like the Nike piece that we did for the in-store experience. There are just like little chapters, like 5 chapters, 6 chapters, and you experience one, then you move on to the next.
Exactly.
You know, and then it keeps you engaged for a while, you know, but you don't have to hold up your phone for 5 minutes, which even though it's a phone, that gets, you know, a little tedious. So you break it up and turn it into, you know, a big experience, but in small pieces, then it can be much longer.
Yep. And it's important to consider the content. If it's a video, you know, the longer the user has to hold their phone up to a thing, like the more fatigue and the more drop off you're going to get. But I think, you know, the real sweet spot with AR, frankly, is giving people an experience that is really magical and cool, that's presented to them in a really good way, but then gives them something that they can explore after the message is delivered. So, you know, we're building a web AR project right now that has these really cool, like super fun animations that are really quick and snappy, and then it resolves to a scene that lets the user sort of like explore and play with it and kind of like go at their own pace. So they're not being presented, they're not, watching something, because people have a tendency to do that when something is unfolding and animating in front of them, they'll like stop and just look at it. And then, you get it to a point where they feel encouraged to then, check it out, explore, walk around, look at it from different angles, really kind of get the full picture of it.
And something to not discount is, AR is magical. And if there are ways for people to share it, then more people will experience it because people will want to share it. So if you're doing some type of AR experiences in the library that are, they're utility, but they're still cool and they're like visually interesting, people are going to talk about it and tell their friends and share it and maybe do snapshots and, and that's potentially going to bring more people into the library or wherever, whatever it is.
Cool. I have one more technical question too. I haven't seen any other questions come through on chat. So if you have any, feel free to throw them in there or just pipe in. What has been your experience like working with like an API through an AR app? So like if we're pulling data from our database or from, there was some talk about electronic resources that we have. Have you guys had success with that? I don't know if I saw any in the examples that we're pulling from an API anywhere.
Yeah, again, I think it depends on kind of how it's built, frankly, and if there's any hooks that we can kind of grab information from. In most cases these days, there are ways to work with other platforms and databases and, things like that. It's really just a matter of how the API is set up and if it's discoverable, like if it's, if there are ways that we can kind of get access from it. And if not, usually there are, ways around it by kind of leveraging other APIs that can kind of like, do sort of like a chain to kind of get the information out of.
Right, cool. All
I'm
right.
reading through the chats. There's some
good conversation in there.
Yep.
And one thing to think about too with AR is that it's really, if you think about it, it's sort of a digital bridge to something. So it triggers some sort of digital information. So, I mean, it could be as simple as, you might be able to build an AR app that recognizes an author's name and takes them to the author's website. So you could have a book and you could scan it and then you'd be on the author's website. So you can find out more about the author or, or anything like that. So that understand that it's, the cool stuff is great, but also the utility that it can do now is really good. Like you talked about the stacks of books, if you have a QR code on the end, I mean, you could just scan it. It'll tell you what's in that aisle of books, what's there, what has moved or that kind of stuff. So you wouldn't have to, you don't have to update the signs at all. You can just do it on there. It's sort of like the menu at the restaurant, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So there's so many things that you can do from a utility standpoint that aren't that difficult to do, honestly, from that standpoint.
So there was a comment in the chats about library land at Second Life, and just something that we were exploring like 6 months ago, which was kind of interesting. In where was it? It was in Altspace. It was a record store in Altspace that you could just transport yourself into this record store, and it had the LP racks, and it had turntables along the wall, and you could just flip through the LPs, pick one up, and if you held it to your head, you'd hear a song from the record. Or if you walked over to the turntable and put it on the turntable, then you can go through the album and listen to it. I mean, you could definitely do something similar. I mean, obviously we're talking about volumes of books, but you could definitely have something similar with bookshelves, and you could just go up and down the aisles, and grab a book, and maybe it turns to a page, or maybe you can flip through the pages, or maybe you hold it up to your head and you hear a passage from the book. But obviously that's a big lift to create something like that, but it's totally doable.
There's a comment in here from Brandon about creating a quick VR tour of a library. That's actually totally doable, not even in traditional VR. We work in web VR for these things, which, most of you might be familiar with if you've done any sort of real estate shopping in the past couple of years. It's pretty normal now to have like these walkthroughs of homes, like these 3D scans of homes. You know, and that's using technology that you can kind of get off the shelf with, man, I'm blanking on it now. Howard, what am I thinking of? The camera that we used with Sheets.
Yeah.
Matterport.
Yep.
So Matterport, you know, essentially it's a camera that just takes these like 360 images and you just sort of like breadcrumb it through a place, and it builds like you know, a VR basically kind of explorable version. It's not traditional VR where the user's, you know, piloting via a controller with a VR headset, but in web VR you can basically use all these 360 image data and kind of make an immersive web version of that VR tour. You know, we did a project with Sheets, which I don't know if you guys have Sheets in Arizona, but it's essentially like I don't know.
They don't have Wawa either.
Yeah,
no Wawa.
It's sort of like a gas station meets a deli, you know, and they have like food and made to order food and like sodas and stuff, but it's also a big gas station chain. But they were opening up into a new market, and they wanted to give people in that market an early previs of sort of what a store looks like and what their offerings are. So we went to a couple locations and shot in 360 with a Matterport, extracted that data from the Matterport so we weren't locked into the Matterport platform, and then, you know, use that to build a custom VR tour of the space, and then embedded these 3D sort of touch points that played a video of some like employee actors that we filmed in our studio, just sort of talking about, you know, here's our coffee station with like 20,000 different kinds of coffee, and like, you know, here's our whatever. So, you know, it was really easy to get to people because they could do it on their phone, and with their phone using their sensor data, they could look around the store as if they were standing in the spot, you know, and seeing it through their phone. But it was all served up on the web. It didn't have to download an app. They didn't have to have a headset. They didn't have to do any of that.
And I see in the chat, let's see, Brandon mentioned the 360 camera. Actually, that's harder to do than you know, using an app like the Matterport app in a tablet and scanning the space. You know, and then also you'd have a much more realistic representation of the space with the Matterport scan. And it's not outrageously expensive. So you guys should look into that because you get really good results. And you know, and you can put that online, as Ben was saying, and people could navigate through the space, and it's pretty awesome.
Yeah, and hey, I'd love to take a trip to Arizona. It's been many years since I've been out there, so if you guys want to do something with Matterport, let us know.
Cool. And I think, yeah,
and you don't. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm seeing Stacy's thing here. You don't have to buy a Matterport. You can, you know, like we work with a guy who owns one, and we use him as just sort of our cameraman, you know, and we just sort of like, it's like work for hire. So you could buy and share one for sure. But, you know, that might be cost effective. It might be cost prohibitive. It's cheaper just to sort of, you know, rent one for a day.
And I think Ben from Scottsdale, I believe you're from Scottsdale, correct? You had a question about digital tourism. That was in the chat.
Yeah, and they kind of touched on that. But one of the things that I personally care about using VR for is helping people who have mobility issues or, you know, have zero money to go anywhere, helping them to go and experience things that they wouldn't otherwise be able to anymore. A lot of elderly people, you know, if their eyesight is going and stuff, VR actually feels even more real to them. Currently, there's some screen issues where, you know, it kind of doesn't look quite real. If you've got good vision, if you put someone who's starting to degenerate in that sense a little bit, it feels real. And like I took my grandfather to a digital location offered by one of Steam's built-in free experiences, which I forget the name of the mountain, but it's in Washington State, beautiful mountains. I let him walk around and explore, and you know, he lit up. And this is somebody who he's 89 years old. He has difficulty doing pretty much everything, and seeing his joy in being able to explore and look at the things that he hasn't been able to for years. That's something that I want to bring to the general public. So that's why I was wondering if you guys had worked with anything like that, or if you had any other anything else to share on that kind of subject.
Absolutely. So I will hop in on this one if it's all right with you guys, but I have 3.5 years of experience of working with people with disabilities. I worked for the Institute on Disabilities stationed at Temple University. And there's definitely many conversations that I had with the director of media and culture there regarding this kind of technology and people with disabilities spanning, you know, physical disabilities, intellectual disabilities, etc. Anyone under the sun really experiencing this kind of technology and bringing it to, I'm thinking, you know, you said, Ben, with mobility issues, some libraries, depending on when they were built, are just not equipped for someone who may have a mobility scooter that is too large. So being able to tour the stacks and go around and find new books, just the same as someone who may be able to be more mobile and can walk, you know, up the stairs or walk through the narrow stacks. There are definitely opportunities here and connections that we have with people who would be able to, you know, sort of give us the inside scoop on what they would really like to have.
And, you know, just in the general VR space, but I'll refer to the Facebook space. You know, you can access the National Geographic, I'll call it the channel, the National Geographic channel within, you know, the Oculus. And, you know, you can travel the world pretty much there and you know, sit on a boat going through, you know, a bay in Vietnam or wherever. But like for my family as well, like my mother, National Geographic in VR is pretty awesome. It's a great way to tour the world. But what I love in VR space is Google Earth, because the Google Earth application in VR is pretty unbelievable, because you can spin the globe in front of you and then pick a spot and then go down to street level and be there and see what it's like. So that's pretty, you know, it's a pretty great representation of the entire Earth. So just a couple options there.
Cool. And I know we're up against time here, and I want to be respectful of everybody's time. So I think we'll close it there for today. I am going to get the slide deck, if that's okay from you guys, if you can send it so I can share it with the group, as well as your website, which has your contact information, if anybody wants to reach out. So again, thank you, Dream Syndicate, for sitting with us and sharing your knowledge. A lot of really great ideas, some fun brainstorming we get to do now. So thank you again, and thank you everybody for coming out. I appreciate it, and I hope you all have a great rest of your day.
Thank you so much, Jesse, and
you
it was a
too.
pleasure
Thank you.
talking to everyone.
Yes,
Bye-bye.
thanks for having us. Bye.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye-bye.